Whoa, Dad, go, Dad.
That's right. Welcome to Whoa Dad, Go Dad. My name's Dave Momper. I'm your host. This is a fatherhood podcast for new dads and soon-to-be dads. I'm a new dad myself, and I'm asking every day, great dads, what does it take? What does it truly take to take on the ultimate role? All right, let's get to it. Frank O'Halloran, welcome to Whoa Dad, Go Dad.
Hey, Dave. It's great to be here.
I'm so glad to be sitting down with you. We are quite a bit of a distance away from one another. What is
We
it?
are.
It's got to be like 3,000 miles, or what's the
I think it's a little further, Dave. I think New York is 3,000 miles
3,000?
from me.
Add another 3 then. We're like 6,000 miles away from each other.
5 or 6. Yeah. That doesn't matter. Zoom closes the gap.
Yeah, here we are rubbing shoulders in the digital world. It's such a treat.
Right.
I've been trying to get Frank on for a little while now, and here we are pulling it off. Frank, for our listeners, for context, let's let them know a little bit. We have a shared arena. We both happen to have worked in a couple different organizations together where we're doing leadership and communication training.
That's
And I know
right.
you've been doing this for, I don't want to say eons, but you're ahead of
A very
me.
long time, Dave. A long time. Yeah.
So tell me and tell the listeners a little bit about your professional vantage on the world, some of the amazing places you've been to, and the work you've got to do with, your fellow human beings. It's taken you around the globe. That's pretty cool. So what's the experience been like over the last few decades?
Well, since I started when I became a corporate trainer, I was already, let's say, in my mid-30s because I had immigrated to Italy when I was a young man. And I worked at the United Nations in Rome at the Food and Agriculture Organization in their office automation department, which was, at the time, office automation was a very new thing. So that was pretty interesting. The UN can be an interesting place to work, and it can also be very bureaucratic, to put it lightly. But I was offered, while I was working at the UN, I was offered a job in a peacekeeping organization. It came out of Camp David. If your listeners remember, Jimmy Carter with Menachem Begin and Anwar Sadat made the historic peace treaty between Egypt and Israel. That organization, also based in Rome, hired me to be the director of HR and public affairs. I was there for about 6.5 years altogether. And I really thought I'd like to go into the business world after being at the UN, being at the peacekeeping. So I said to my wife, let's go back to New York City, where I'd gone to university and lived for a while, went to NYU, and because I want to change my career. So she said, okay, we'll do that, but we got to move back to Italy when you change your career. So we moved back to New York, and I started working, doing corporate training and facilitating different training programs, communications mostly. We're there in New York for a few years, and my wife she's an opera singer. She wanted to be back in Europe, which is better for opera singers, let's say. And so we moved back, but this time we moved to Venice, not to Rome. And we've been here 26 years now. So our daughter was born here and grew up here, and she just spent the summer in New York City. So she's thinking about going to Paris for a year, maybe going back to New York. She's almost out of university, so she's ready to go.
Amazing.
We'll be an empty nest household.
Coming right up. That's going to be an interesting shift in your mindset, I suspect. Is that fair to say?
I imagine it will be. Yeah, we had a taste of it this summer, and I missed her a lot. So did my wife, but she's a good kid. I think we managed to raise her in a way that we would enjoy her as a young adult. But just to get back to work for a while, so I started when we were in New York. I worked for one consulting firm, one training firm. I did it every day. And when I moved here, I became freelance. So I worked on expanding my network, and that led me to work in about 60 different countries around the world. Travel all the time, spent a lot of time traveling and doing a lot of different training programs from not just communication, but leadership, sales, negotiation, managing your career, project management, how to be a coach, all kinds of things.
It's taken you a lot of places. You've encountered a lot of people, and you've learned how to perhaps guide and coach people across different topics, I suppose, huh?
Yeah,
What is the
exactly.
knack? What is the knack to be that guy? And I'm working towards that myself. I'm 8 years into this role, into this capacity. Uh, what does it take? What are the key characteristics you think to really thrive in this part of the business space?
Well, I think the key thing is to just be able to take the intellectual property that exists, which is vast if we're talking about sales or leadership or negotiation. And there's tons and tons of things written about that. There's tons of videos to watch about that. But to be able to take that and distill it into a training program or a facilitation where you get to say intelligent things every once in a while about the topic, uh, to be able to distill it and keep people paying attention to you. I
Mm.
think that's key. So you have to have that affinity for the people you're working with, which I think, Dave, you have in spades. I remember the first night we met, I think we had dinner together at a friend's house, right? A colleague's
Right.
house in Denver. And
Indeed.
I think we were sitting across from each other. And I immediately said, okay, this guy, uh, someone I'll be in touch with for a while.
Oh,
I
thanks,
got
right?
that feeling. So I
Yeah, but I
think that
appreciate.
affinity for people, not to make it about yourself so much, but to make it about them, their learning journey. What do they need to acquire? To what skills do they need to acquire to be successful in their jobs and their careers? Yeah.
Mm,
It's tough out there in the corporate world, you
it
know,
is. It
and
is.
we can help them out.
Yep. And of course, the term coach or trainer feels right. But as you're saying this, thinking about our topic of fatherhood today,
Yeah,
you have shepherded or served as a shepherd to a lot of professionals, which,
yeah,
you're helping them understand what they're actually desiring, perhaps getting clear on a mission for themselves, maybe the organization, and then helping them, take action, hold themselves accountable, speak clearly, take smart risks, be calculated, be
yeah.
decisive. How different,
And
if at all, is that from fatherhood?
well, it's not too much different, although you're hopefully closer to your children than you are to someone you work with, obviously, right? So you
Yep.
have to be conscious of that, and that they look up to you and love you and respect you, and you want to keep that going. Plus, the big difference, Dave, is children are for the long term. If I
This is
meet you
true.
for 3 days in a leadership seminar, I can be really nice to you. Oh, e even if you're being miserable, I can be really nice to you for 3 days.
Right.
With children, it's the long term. One thing I didn't mention about my career, which I should mention, I sort of always skip over it. But when I first got to Rome, I needed to find a job. I was a new immigrant in Italy, and I worked as the boarding headmaster of an American high school. So I was in charge of all the kids who lived in the boarding department. There were 52 kids from
Mm.
different places around the world. Their parents were anyway, and they lived there in Rome. So I had a lot of experience with teenagers, which really helped because the teenage years, you probably heard this, Dave, it can be a little challenging at times, right?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Very interesting. So you got a taste of being, you know, a manager of teenagers, which one day as a parent, you're gonna have to manage at least a teenager.
Right.
Uh, and
Exactly.
but that was early on in your career. I think
Yeah.
maybe to really jump off into the deep end together, I'm curious how, and your wife's name, is it Liesel? Is that right?
Liesel. Liesel.
Liesel. So Liesel and you end up at one point in your life, actively deciding to have kids. Is that fair to say? You kind of
Yeah,
came
I think
around,
that's fair to that. Like, okay, let's now is the time, right? So uh we did, but we it took a while. There wasn't an automatic thing. There was had times when it was quite upsetting because it took a few years. And I, it's funny. It just all of a sudden, like when it happened, we were both a little shocked
right?
because we had sort of gotten used to it not happening.
Right. So maybe this is not the ultimate question I was getting us to, but I was just curious about thoughts on, for those who are listening to this, presumably you're already a father or a parent because you're here listening because you're already actively in the role, but
Yeah.
perhaps you're adding another kiddo to the mix, hopefully, but you're not succeeding. Like that's a mental challenge. It's also
It-
it's hard. It's got to be hard on the heart, on the body,
yeah.
especially for mama. But I mean, any reflections on what it took to navigate that for yourself, or to be your wife's partner and help her navigate that? You're pursuing a family, hoping
And
for
it's
a
not
family.
happening.
It's
Yeah.
not happening. How did that go for you? And then maybe any reflections on what, if
Well,
anybody's out there facing this?
it's disappointing, and I think it's more disappointing for. But I think it was more disappointing for my wife. I mean, every woman's magazine, every newspaper article that talks about fertility, infertility. Every month you have you know, a reminder that it didn't work, it's not happening. There's talk of, you know, going down the IVF uh, path, which is full of complications, and it was it wasn't the best. Let's put it that way. Fortunately, we didn't give up. You know, fortunately, we kept trying, and and it worked.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
and
maybe
we
that's
were
the reflection is don't give up. It does take a degree of persistence, for some.
yeah.
And then you
Yeah,
didn't give up. And around, you were telling me early as we were preparing, was it 46 or 47 you became a dad?
47. Yeah,
47.
yeah.
So
I was a
I'm currently,
mature father.
yes, a very wise, mature father. And it feels like, you know, it depends on what your perspective of time is and maybe your plan for life, but it's almost, I feel like, more equipped because I'm about to turn 44. So
Yeah,
a couple years behind you, but still feeling like a mature dad. I like that terminology. My friend Charles Lim would appreciate that as well. I just published his. He's 45 as a first time dad,
yeah.
mature, wise, 45.
I think
And
it helps, I think it helps. I will say, though, the day my daughter was born, in a weird kind of way time works, I felt so much younger.
mm,
Being a dad made me feel 20 years younger for some reason, even though I knew how old I was.
no,
It
it
just
kind of does that, right? It just
Yeah.
brings, fresh life, fresh energy and life force into your world. And I don't know, infuses some vibrance, I suppose, into your own step, so to
Yeah.
speak.
And I
Interesting.
think, the other thing is my wife was we had read a couple of different books, and one of them seemed to think that the best way to give birth is to stand up. I know there's different variations.
Sure.
The traditional one is to be in a hospital bed. There's the swimming pool birth.
Yeah.
There's the birth at home. She wanted the midwives, and she wanted to stand up
Mm,
to deliver. And so that's not something that happens very often in the hospitals here, but the midwife said, "Yeah, let's do it. That's great."
mm,
So a lot of people came in to watch my daughter being born, which wasn't so nice for my wife, actually. 'Cause she was screaming and all of those things. But I was like a supportive audience for her. Uh, and when she actually delivered on our daughter, we were all sitting on the floor at that point because I had to hold my wife up uh, during the labor process. We're all sitting on the floor, and the midwife came over and told my wife that she should get up and get into bed and be examined and all of that. So when that happened, she fainted,
Really?
and the nurses and the midwives, they just put on in my arms and threw us across the room. And anyway, they took these away to be checked out and all of that. And Anna and I were just Anna was wide awake and she was just staring at me for like 45 minutes. Then a nurse came by with a baby in her arms, a little boy, and she said, "Oh, good, you're here. Come with me." And she took me to what they called the nido, the nest, and all of those nurses there just tossed those babies around like sausages. So we gave Anna a shot and we put some drops in her eyes and we cleaned her up and got her dressed and put some cream on her skin. And it for me, it just took away all the like, oh my God, I have a baby, right? It just made it very practical for me. So I like that introduction to being a father.
Patty, presumably your wife was okay. She had just
She's
fainted, so
fine. Yeah, she was
yeah,
fine.
it's
Yeah.
an intense experience. I mean, I haven't done it
You
myself,
had
of
a
course.
different experience, I know, right?
Yeah, yeah, we had a different experience, but nevertheless, you could see how the your partner, your wife, is giving everything she can in that moment.
Everything. Right,
Everything, her whole spirit, her whole heart, all of her physicalness,
everything.
and to faint is like almost the least of our worries, I suppose, considering how much how. So I was in awe of my wife. I was definitely
Yeah,
in awe of
I
my wife.
mean, and, it's, we both looked at each other like, "Oh my god, I can't believe that that's what you have to go through." Uh, so it's
And
amazing, you know?
so now here was that question I had just maybe couple minutes ago. I was just thinking about Liesel and you bring Anna into the world. Your wife is an opera singer, so she's got a craft about her, I suspect, an art, an elegance. You're both, I suspect, world travelers. You've been 60 countries at that point. Maybe not all of them. I don't know, but a lot of them. Uh, you're a U.S. citizen, but you're living in Italy. Um, it's like, what was the process to decide how to raise your daughter? Like, did you and your wife sit down and say, all right, let's raise her this way. We could raise her this way, this way, this way, and this way, but let's raise her this way. Was there an intentionality and a plan and a folding in of all these unique experiences in life? And even I love that you started your what would we call it? Your first adult years in Paris, if I heard earlier
Right.
correctly, and your daughter is mimicking that.
No, she wants to go to Paris. We'll see if she
Yeah,
goes
right.
when she
So you
graduates.
kind of, we set our kids up to follow in our footsteps, or at least glean things from us. And it's going to
Yeah.
happen one way or the other, both the good stuff and maybe the bad stuff, if there is such a thing in our worlds. But then there's also, you can either just let it unfold, or you sit down with your partner and you say, here's what we should do to give her the best life, to raise her thoughtfully, intentionally. What was your approach to the
Um,
experience?
we had some friends who had kids, before we did, and some, we liked the way they were doing things, and we sort of copied them. I don't think we had really a formal approach, but I will tell you, Dave, we we read this book, which was, we were reading all of these baby books, what to do when you're having the baby and all that. We my wife read one and she said, "Hey, this one's different. Why don't you read this one?" So I read it and I really liked it too. It was called The Secrets of the Baby Whisperer. And I don't know if you know an old Robert Redford movie called The Secrets of the Horse Whisperer. It was based on a book.
Well, I
And
know Robert Redford, but I don't know if I've seen that.
yeah, well, the story of the horse whisperer is it's not really the problem is not with the horse. It's with the horse's owner. So you
Yeah.
fix the way the owner is treating the horse, and then your horse is fine, right?
Okay. Yep.
So this English nanny wrote a book called The Secrets of the Baby Whisperer, which told you exactly how to do what to do to have the perfect baby, right? And we both decided we would follow that. And my wife is a classical artist. She's an opera singer. She is disciplined. She is very focused. I'm more of a generalist, let's say. But we were both very disciplined on following the instructions of the baby whisperer, which
Mm.
I still think is genius. And then then she wrote another book called The Secrets of the Toddler Whisperer.
Yeah.
And so that was a brilliant book too, which we followed as well. And that worked really well. And so we were just thinking, okay, she's going to do the secrets of the kindergarten whisperer or the elementary school whisperer or whatever. But unfortunately, she got a melanoma and died. So that she only wrote 2 books, which was, but by that time we were well on our way, So
Sure.
we took a little bit from our friends and, you know, what how they were raising their kids and from this book, which was genius.
And I implied in the title and your example to the horse whisperer with Robert Redford, I get kind of the essence to a degree, but what would you say for newer fathers, newer parents? What's the essence of that book? What's the takeaway that we want in our back pocket? Or
Oh,
that your
well,
friends even said, that your friends gave you some advice, like, I don't know, what were those
right.
best practices?
The advice we got that we really followed was begin how you want to end up,
Mm.
right? So begin how you want to end up. Now, this isn't going to work for everybody, but we decided the day Anna came home from the hospital, she was already, because in Italy, women stay longer in the hospital, which is a good thing, I think. They stay like 4 or 5 days. I think in America, it's a few hours at
Yeah, it
best. I don't
depends.
know.
Yeah, it
Maybe
just
it's a little
depends.
longer. But so Anna went to her room, right? The first night. Like, she didn't sleep in the bed with us. She didn't sleep next to the bed. She slept in her own bedroom.
Heard that.
And, you know, that because what the baby whisperer said was you don't wanna end up with a 10-month-old kid, sleeping in your bed. You're never going to sleep, and your side's gonna be a nightmare, so we did that, and that worked well, and then also the whole idea about crying and, the baby whisperer says the baby's day is like 3 hours long. And in the 3 hours, they have to eat, play, get cleaned up, and then go back to bed. Or maybe it's less than 3. I don't know. And then it expands over time, right?
Sure.
And if you do that, the kid never has a problem going to sleep. And Anna never had a problem going to sleep, like never had a problem. And the only time she made a fuss is when we messed up the schedule.
Yeah, right.
Like like it was our fault. We did the wrong thing, you know?
Well, that's interesting because I know a decent amount of people and firsthand friends of ours who are in the kids space, the baby space. And some friends are very regimented on their scheduling throughout the day.
Yeah,
We're definitely taking a more lax approach. There's
right.
still, Leo is at this recording, he's about 10 and a half on his way to 11 months old. He's sleeping well through the night, and then he still sleeps mostly. He takes 2 naps throughout the day, it seems like, but we're not putting him down at a forced time
Right,
or
right.
a scheduled time for a specific amount of time. We just know sometime in the later part of the morning, and he's probably needing an hour nap, and sometime in the latter part of the afternoon, he needs a bit of a nap. And then we're going to bed at the same time and getting up at the same time with them.
Yeah.
But it's fairly loose compared to some very regimented approaches. So I don't
Yeah.
know. It feels like there's a lot of customization we get to apply.
Yeah, I think you're right, and you wanna
Um,
do it your way too,
yeah, yeah. You want to
so
do it your own way and
your
meet.
own way, exactly, but if it becomes a problem, the older the kid is, then, the older the baby is, the more it's gonna take,
Sure.
to get them on the schedule. I mean, we did it and it worked for us, but I don't
Yeah.
may not work for other people.
How
And
about
it worked
the
for Anna too. She always went to bed. No, we never I remember, that I knew some people who had kids and that going to bed would take like 4 hours, 3.5 hours.
yeah?
And when the
That sounds
kid is 8, that can be kind of annoying. That ruins your whole evening, you know?
yeah. That sounds awful. Good Lord.
Yeah.
Uh,
So you
t-
don't want that either, you don't want
Tell
that.
me, like, almost your mindset when you became a dad. You were striving to become a dad. You and
Yeah,
your wife striving to become parents, and then there you are as a new dad. What was your mindset about, or I guess, how did you see the role? How did you think about the role? Were you, because, and just to be fair, I'm thinking every day about the role, partly
yeah.
because I've got a podcast about fatherhood. Yeah. And I'm also, I don't know if this is true for you being a 47-year-old dad, but I was in my 40s. I happen to have this enough experience and an arrangement in my life that I can bring fatherhood front and center and almost study it
Mhm.
differently than if I was 20 and I was just like, I
I
guess
know.
I'm making some assumptions that at 20 you're just
Yeah.
like kind of getting tugged in. I don't know, as a father, a young father versus a patient, stoic 40 something father. No, do you kind of get what I'm at? Like, what was your
Yeah.
thinking about the role, your duties, your
Well,
responsibilities, the gift that it is? Lay
yeah,
it
I
on me.
mean, it was absolutely, for me a gift and also for my wife. And, I think she's much younger than I am. She's 10 years younger than I am. So, but what couple of things happened when Anna was born and she was in my arms and, staring at me. I'll never forget that. But I just felt like I had known her my whole life,
Mm,
so it seemed like she was always with us in some way. It was a very bizarre feeling, and I realized that I would do anything to protect this kid, like anything, like I this kid needed to be protected, and also I believed that I wanted, I think everybody should have someone who thinks they are like the most important person in the world. I really believe that. I mean, you don't want to spoil the kid and give them everything, but you do want. I think everybody needs that. So I thought, that would be a good, so that Anna knows that whatever happens, she can, depend on me, rely on me, and so that was my outlook on doing it, and also kids are fun. You can have a lot you can have a
I
lot of
bet.
fun. I mean,
Yeah,
s this was gonna be a fun, pleasant experience all the way
sure.
through. Yeah,
I suspect at 47 and 37, you and your wife, and living all, New York and Italy and traveling the world,
yeah.
you're like, you had to admit, okay, this is going to be fun, yes, but it's also going to change your rhythm and your lifestyle
Yeah,
drastically or a little, or what was your thought? Like, how did you?
it didn't change well, it might have changed our lifestyle, but it was fun, it was just fun to have the kid, and we were happy, having the kid and, having Anna around. It was a lot of fun. We enjoyed it. Uh, we were also lucky though that, well, my wife, obviously she's freelance, I'm freelance. Uh, well, I had a moment of panic once, and I thought one of us should have a job, because we need to be more responsible.
Yeah.
And I actually almost got a job. I almost took the job, and at the last minute, I thought, no, I'm not doing this. Because we live in Venice, in Italy. I don't know if I mentioned that, and I was thinking about taking a job with a company based in London, but they said I could have my home office here in Venice and just go to London from time to time. Then they changed their mind, said, no, you have to move here, move your family here, because you're going to have to do things at night. And we really need you here all the time. And I thought, okay, not part of the dream.
Mhm.
So, and then I realized, that was a stupid thing because you don't want me working for you, Dave. I'm much better as a freelancer. I always say I'm like the best boss I ever had, even though I feel like firing myself sometimes. Uh, this suits me very well. And, my wife sang a lot at the Fenice Opera House here. So she had a lot of contracts there when Anna was small. That was nice. Now she's traveling again and performing in London and different places in the States sometimes. So it the one of the things about having a kid is the mystery of how it all works out. Like, you think, "Wow, what are we gonna do? How are we gonna do this? What are we gonna" and really it was pretty easy. We do have, I must say, a strong community of friends, uh, here in Venice. If we don't have family, like Anna's family was all in the States. But we have good friends that had kids, and they all grew up together, and they're sort of like cousins. There's
Sure.
even though they're not blood relations, and
Yep. But they
the
they can
community
count on
helps.
each other. Yeah.
Yeah, they can
They can
count on
absolutely
each
count on each
other.
other. I was just
Yeah,
thinking the good fortune of Anna, and I love that you said you when you were looking into her eyes as a little one, you feel like I've known you forever.
I felt that way. Like
Amazing.
this wasn't like a stranger. This was just someone
Yeah.
who was part of us.
That's beautiful. And you wonder, like, you know, I know we have a lot of explanations for, what this experience of life is, and there's the spiritual ones and the religious ones and everything in
Yeah,
between. But you wonder if you've ever crossed paths with your little nugget in a
yeah.
different life or
It
somehow,
could happen. It could have
like, what?
happened. Yeah.
How do I know you already, even though it's the first time I've met you? That's pretty
Yeah.
special. So
Um,
Anna has the good
and
fortune of two vibrant, aspiring human beings, and she's about to graduate college. Is that right?
in June
Yeah. So,
2025. Yeah.
and the way you said over in Italy, and maybe this is across Europe, but clarify for me:
I'm
3 years of
not sure.
university, 5 years of high school, 3 years
5
of
years of high school, yeah, and
yeah.
3 years for your degree from university, and then you can go for, another 2 years for what is sort of like a master's.
I see.
You could do that. Or you could go somewhere else and do a master's. If she wants to go to the States or to
Hmm.
London, she could do her master's there. But
Cool.
Anna, because my wife works in the arts and she's been exposed to a lot of, let's say, culture, a lot of colorful people that are my wife's colleagues. And of course, our colleagues, Dave, they're a lot of fun. They're great people. Uh, she's been exposed to a very broad range of people. The other thing that happens if you live in a place like Venice, maybe even Denver, everyone you ever met in your life comes to visit you. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Oh, Frank and Lisa are in Venice. I think I'll go to Italy on holidays. So we
Yeah.
get a lot of visitors, which is great.
Yeah.
It's
I'm
really
coming to
great.
see you. I am coming to see you.
You were planning that one time, right?
Yeah, we need to do it. There's so much worth celebrating. My wife's birthday was yesterday, by the way. So one of
Happy
these
birthday.
birthdays, yeah, thank you. I'll, t- I'll, she's right upstairs somewhere right now. I'll tell her you said that. But yeah, there's a couple, we really haven't had a honeymoon since we got married because life moves so fast. We had the kid a
Uh,
couple months after we got married. Just so, a proper.
Exactly, because I remember you saying you were coming to Italy, and then in the next email, you were having a baby and getting married. What?
Yeah,
What is
that's how it
fast?
goes. That's how it goes. So
Uh,
my question tied to Anna, 20 years, she's almost 21, and she's got two great parents. Knowing your world, I almost want to hear step outside of the parenting role for a second. And the foundation to leadership and communication, like the cornerstone principles of each of those things, what do you think are the key facets or attributes of a great leader and a great communicator? Two different buckets. I know they overlap, but
Well,
and
I think they do overlap, right? But I've found, first of all, a great leader has to be emotionally intelligent, right? You have to be emotionally intelligent. So you have to recognize the emotions. As a father, I think it's important to recognize the emotions of your child, right?
okay,
Because they get upset. Some parents I've known have expected their kids to have all the emotional intelligence of a 30-year-old
sure.
when they're 5, right?
Frank, real quick though, what is emotional intelligence? I mean, I know this
Well,
term I know what it is, I think, and then it gets thrown around everywhere, and we're saying it as though it's obvious what it is. But are we clear, as like professionals and parents, like emotional intelligence, maybe
sure.
just give me a definition.
Well, how I define it
Yeah.
is just understanding why someone is doing something or saying something in the way that they're saying it.
Okay.
Understanding that and then adjusting your own behavior, like recognize it in other people, but also recognize in yourself when you're ready to fly off the handle and uh, just take a moment,
Mm,
right? Just take a moment and think, what is the most intelligent way to handle this situation, right? So let me give you an example. Let's say you go to the supermarket, right? So you're in the supermarket and you see a young dad in the supermarket with their 3-year-old son who just got out of nursery school and is all hyped up. So the kid on the bottom shelf sees like 100 bottles of shampoo in different colors. So he knocks them all down on the floor, right? So when you see the father scream and yell at him and make a big scene and maybe even give him what we say in Italian, the schiaffo, a little slap, that to me shows a low degree of emotional intelligence because the kid just came from nursery school or kindergarten where your whole job is to build the castle with the blocks and then your friend knocks it down and then you go knock his down
that's
and
the
then
fun part.
yeah, that's what kids do. So when you see the dad say, okay, little Giovanni, oh, we got to pick these up now. That shows a higher degree of emotional intelligence. And I think when you're the boss of people, like I've managed people in my career, you have to you have to understand that. What's the best, most intelligent way to handle this situation? That's gonna produce the best results.
Mm,
And that's what I think is the key thing. Now that's how you act and what you say, right? Will change based on how intelligent you're being on dealing with it. Mhm. And some people are better than that than others. Some people work on it more. Obviously, you and I, Dave, we teach this, so it's probably more true for us than a lot of people. And we have the maturity. Now at 20 or 25, if I had a kid, would I be like that? I don't know, you know?
mhm.
I often ask myself that because if you're 20 or 25 and you have a kid, do you grow up instantly because you have this kid or not?
Yeah.
You know?
Well, that's funny because yeah, if at 20 to 25 you have a kid, all of a sudden you get catapulted into adulthood. But when you're 40 something and you have a kid, you get yanked down into your youthful years again.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, if you're in your 40s, you're not worried about your career. You're not worried about, I mean, you may be worried about making enough money and all that, but it's really like you know how to take care of yourself, right? You know how to take care of your family. You know what to do. You know what. I I think you're a little calmer
Yes.
than
So
than in
leadership, one facet, emotional intelligence, other aspects of
start
leadership.
with that. And then one of the things that we talk a lot about in negotiating and in sales and a lot of different training, coaching, uh, ask instead of telling, you
Mm,
know, because kids get a lot of direction. I mean, they get like a ton of direction.
yes.
And, they have thoughts, they have opinions, and, and if they don't, they wanna hear yours, So it just, it's,
So a great leader and a
because
great
of all
father.
of this. Yeah,
I'll just take an inventory of this. Less telling to get results or to get action or to get, for people to
yeah,
execute or operate, right? More inquiry,
yeah,
right?
little
And
more inquiry
and
and
using inquiry as a way to guide people. And I think that's almost the distinction of, say, an advisor and a coach. An advisor tells you what you need to do, whether you do it or not, that's up to you. And then, and then
yeah,
a coach is
no,
seeing possibilities and inviting you to consider them and
exactly,
revealing wisdom to you in the form of questions. And to do that as a leader is a bit of an art. It's an awareness. It's tied to emotional intelligence and taking
yeah.
on perspective of others and knowing who you are and where you're at. What's going to be the best leverage? Is it a tell or is it an ask? I like that a lot.
And sometimes you don't have to say anything. You just let them figure it out, or they don't really need advice. They just need to get it off their chest. Also, they don't need to tell you, they don't need you telling them, I should say, exactly what they should be doing and how they should handle this and all of that. I mean, now, I don't want it to sound like you never give advice or you never give counsel or you never share
Relatives.
your experiences. Of course you do, but we all know how to do that. I think it's more challenging to
Yes.
just either, just ask what's going on or or and to be a little intelligent about asking the question. When my daughter was small, the classic thing you'll ask your kid when they come home from school is, "How was school today?" And they don't tell you anything, right?
It's fine.
But you wanna find out, what happened. So just ask it differently or, I remember once, and probably I did this a hundred times, you know, I wanted to find out what went on in school that day, right? So instead of saying, "Oh, what went on in school?" I just said, "Oh, I saw Camila's dad today," which it was my friend's, my daughter's friend in grade school. And as soon as I mentioned that, she said, "Oh, you wouldn't believe what Camila did today at school and what the teacher said." And what, it just all came out the whole day. And so you got to be a little clever about that kind of thing. And the other thing that you can't have a million rules, right? So if you're working for the kind of boss that has a million different rules, a million different directives and all of that, I think that applies to being a dad as well. I mean, you have to have some, obviously, and
Sure.
I I I tried to make it with Anna, I wanted to make it, someone gave me the advice once, there should be 5 things that you're worried about.
Mm,
And the 5 things are like safety, because kids are wild, plus we live in a city that's all canals.
it's true. It's a,
There's no guardrails here, right?
oh,
So
wow.
you have to make sure that they're safe and they know what to do and what not to do, and hygiene is important because kids like to get dirty and stay dirty, right?
Yeah.
That's important. Manners to me was really important. Table manners, stuff like that might be more European than American. I don't know, but I think that's important. And being kind and empathetic. Eating is important. You don't want to put up with too much of a picky eater. A little bit's okay, but too much.
Sure.
And of course, bedtime.
Yeah.
Yeah. because
So
if kids
those are the
don't
5.
sleep and they don't eat,
Right.
you're going to have a mess on your hands.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
And
I mean, I think keep it to that. I know these people who had, you know, 3 kids, I think, and so they were they're Americans, and they were allowed a half hour of screen time a week,
Mm,
right? So for a 12-year-old boy to have a half hour of screen time, that's a pretty restrictive, rule, right?
mhm,
So what the little boy was doing is he was waking himself up at 3:30, going downstairs, stealing his mom's iPad, playing video games till 6, and then putting himself back to bed to wake up at 7 to go to school. And that
impressive,
that went
actually.
on.
That's like I'm not even mad. I'm actually impressed. That's
Yeah.
fantastic. I mean,
Yeah, exactly. I mean, but, it's that Buddhist thing of, like, if you go so far in one direction, you're gonna manifest the opposite.
yeah, interesting.
And, that was happening. Of course, they flipped out and crazy when they found out what the kid was doing. Like,
That's
the
funny.
teacher's like, "Yeah, your son's pretty tired. Does he go to bed on time?" Yeah. But kids
And
will do that, so you gotta have some kind of
well,
give and
isn't
take there. Mm.
you it's, bear with me on this, but I feel like the mindset of a kiddo, they're basically seeking they're seeking parameters. They're seeking borders or limitations, and they're kind of like, what are the rules, the laws of the land? They're actually pressure testing everything around
Everything.
them,
Yeah,
and not to be malicious or to be conniving or whatever, but more just to make sense of the world.
right.
And if you, as a good leader with your professional realm or with kiddos, like giving people a little bit of a, you know, here are our creative parameters. Here are the different limitations we're working with, or here's the budget we have. Here's the timeline we have. Here are the
Yeah,
rules of this game we're playing. And now at the same time, you have to give them some autonomy to just run with that, right?
yeah, absolutely.
How did that show up for Anna and you and the parenting world?
I think, it might there may be a slight difference between boys and girls in this, and I
Yep.
don't have a lot of experience with boys, but, I remember from the high school I worked at, the boys were a little wilder than the girls were, but, with Anna, I think what happened, though, with her, what was important, at least, was for her to be able to express herself, you know? And she didn't really give us too much trouble about breaking the rules, and if she did it in a way that we didn't know about.
Mm,
So, that was okay, and, she got away with, I don't know, maybe reading at night or watching TV under the covers or whatever, but, she didn't make an issue out of it, and then when she was 16, she was sort of pushing the boundaries of her curfew, like what time she had to be home.
uh,
Uh, and we had COVID, and in Italy, it was very severe.
Gosh,
So there was a curfew for 2 years. Everybody had to be home at 10 o'clock.
wow.
So that solved that problem because when the curfew was lifted, she was 18.
Well, this begs a massive question in a way, but your daughter being 20, she has lived her almost some of her most formidable years with a worldwide pandemic front and center, just hovering over everything she does, everything we all do. What has it been like if you could tap into and kind of take on her perspective with some of that emotional intelligence? Like, what's it been like for a 16 to 20-year-old growing up in these times? Even tell me about Anna specifically, and then
Yeah,
others. What's been your sense that maybe we need as parents to tend to, as the parental body at large, to be mindful of these 20 somethings that are going to be, by the way, within 3, 4, 5 years, they're going to be working with us.
yeah.
And I
I
don't know,
think
just what's on your mind there.
Well, I think one thing it did was it pushed them, not that they needed any help with this, but it pushed them to the screens. Right?
Mm.
Like, it just everything was done school was done online, their communications with their friends now, it might have been different in America, but in Italy, we weren't allowed to go more than 200 meters from our house, we had to have a document with, to show the police of where we lived and all that kind of thing, so it all became like an online world for them. And I they didn't really like it at first, but then they didn't like it when they had to go back to school either. They sort of got used to it. And I think, that kind of lack of face-to-face communication will have some kind of implication for them.
It must.
They might be less, um, they might be like just less talkative in a way, or I don't know. We'll see how it plays out. But the other thing about kids is they're so flexible and they're quick to change. A lot of them are quick to change. But I think it just became a more of a screen-based culture. Mm.
Oh, well, we'll see what those implications are as the world unfolds in the next decade.
We will. I wonder what's going to happen. If it shuts them down a little bit or takes more to get them to express themselves.
Big- So, Frank, you've let's see, as a father, you've deployed certain leadership skills or characteristics so that you can be a great leader for Anna as her dad. And you've also probably equipped her with certain leadership attributes, either
Hope so.
directly, you've either said, "Hey, by the way, being decisive is valuable, so work on that," or you've just kind of infused little leadership attributes. So
Yeah.
we could spend a lot more on that, but I'm curious on the communication side because when we're coaching people in a communication capacity, leadership is often more of a facilitated experiential type of workshop, but communication is a little bit more programmatic or
Right.
or formulaic,
Yeah.
right? So there's always like a beginning, a middle, and end to your presentation. You got to think of who your audience is first, and if you have emotional intelligence, what's their life like? What's their relationship to the topic? How do they feel about it? And then what do you perhaps, based on your business objective, what do you want them to do or to feel or to know as a result of whatever you're saying? Like, there's a lot of steps to be an effective communicator that we
Yeah.
teach people in a formula capacity. And then there's the craft of it. And then there's just reps, getting in front of a lot of people over time, getting comfortable with that. So, at what point did you sit down with Anna and say, here's how you become an amazing communicator and
Yeah. Well, it
work
was
her
little
through
less.
some of this? Or did you not do
A
that? And she developed that on her own. I just can't imagine you'd let her
couple.
get away with not being an incredible communicator, knowing our
Right.
world. I don't know. Maybe
Right.
I'm jumping to a
Uh,
conclusion.
no, you're right, Dave. I did not let her get away with that. But
Yeah.
what
Right.
I didn't really push it too much, but I did take her to work with me, which I recommend you do with Leo when he's small, like 8 or 9. Like just let him see, because she'd been to work with my wife a million times. Like
Mm. Cool.
uh, but never with me. So when she was about 10 or 11, she came to London with me and went to work with me. And that was an amazing experience. So she got, the impression of that. And then she always liked, she was always interested in my work and what I did. And so, we have another colleague who lives here in Venice, Judith. She and I did a class. We did an actual class for Judith's boys, Anna and their friend,
You did.
in
Oh, that's fun.
communicating, and it was just an amazing experience. So we did the formal training as well as, the thing that really, I think, impressed Anna the most, and if you meet her, you can ask her this someday, but she uh, always refers to me as asking the best questions. And I think that has stuck with her a little bit. Like, instead of just talking and telling people what you think, ask them, ask them questions that are going to get them to think.
Oh my gosh, that's like the ultimate best possible takeaway, I think, because if you're trying to, communicating leadership, it's all complex. There's nuance. It's hard. Our duty as maybe parents or as coaches is to take hard things and simplify them, make them accessible, to distill them down to maybe. I love that she can see, even if she doesn't get all of this, all these formulas and everything yet, although by the time she's in their professional career, she'll be immersed in plenty of places to refine her skills. But
The other thing, Dave, which I've done, my wife sings every Saturday in Venice. She has a season. It lasts about 7 months. And in those 7 months, she performs with the orchestra every Saturday night. And I introduce it. I'm like the, what do you call it? Like
MC, huh?
master of ceremonies, whatever. So I do it, and I have Anna do it with me. I do it in
Okay.
English, she does it in Italian, because there's always a mixed audience, and that's like in front of 100 people every Saturday night.
Mm.
She which is a great experience, and she's gotten really good at it,
Perfect. So you've put her in scenarios where she
I have,
must communicate or she gets to communicate. And
Also, the other thing we've done is, which has been nice because it became a tradition, it became something that kids look forward to. But there's a theater, what do you call it? A type of theater called pantomime, English pantomime, which is a musical comedy based on a fairy tale with local jokes and sing-alongs and that kind of thing. And so my friends and I have always done one here in Venice. We do it every 2 years, and the kids have been in it since they're 3, right? And we do it for charity. Uh, there's a woman's prison on our island here in Venice, and if your mom is a criminal in Italy, you go to prison and live with her until you're 7 years old or something like that, which
really,
is good because little kids want to be with their mommies. Is bad because there's a stigma attached to that. So
sure.
some women here have a charity that takes care of these kids. They get them nice toys to play with, nice books to read. They take them to football or ballet or, art class, or they try to give them the life that any kid who wasn't in a prison would have.
Yeah.
So we do this for charity. We raise a bunch of money. We give it to the kids. My kids, Judith's kids have been involved. My daughter and Judith's kids have been involved. You know, growing up, it's been a big part of their lives. Yeah. So,
Interesting.
but they had to act on the stage. They had to take roles, and so
So one of
good
your
communicators.
one of your strategies or whatever you'd say, tactics as a father is to put your kiddos into scenarios where they must communicate, right?
Yeah,
They get to communicate, they must communicate, but you're finding opportunities in your own realm to bring her into the mix there. And I want to make sure I acknowledge this, like the ultimate evidence that she's a good communicator is whether she's asking more questions than telling, right? That she sees the power in that.
power in the questions.
There's something special about that. And ironically, I'm anticipating this with Leo as he begins talking, like he will just be asking, why is that way? Why is that this way? And it'll almost be annoying. It's like, I don't have all the answers, right? But don't lose the inquiry, right?
Right. Don't lose
Keep that going. So I don't want to stifle his inquiry. And, this just kind of seems like a joke.
I remember
My kid,
when
all he
Anna
does
was
is,
when Anna was 6 or 7, we watched Oliver, which is a family movie. Right? Oliver is a little boy living in an orphanage. It took us like 5 hours. What's an orphanage? What do you
yeah,
mean he doesn't have parents?
yeah.
Oh,
Right.
yeah. Like a million questions just getting through that movie. It was so funny. My wife and I were laughing.
I love that. So embracing their inquiry, never stifling. I could see that as a lifelong theme or a for the next few decades. I should be embracing that. So, Frank, I'm thinking about um, the the role that I'm in as a new dad. So there's just in general, I'm a new dad. I'm under a year as a mature new dad, and then there's so I could ask you advice on like what do you think I should be on the lookout or prepared for as a new dad? But then there's also your assessment of our current the current world we live in and looking forward and the unique facets of our times.
Yeah.
I know you can't predict the future, but you can assess our world that we actually live in right now. What kind of what kind of advice do you have for a new dad uh because of the nature of the world or with it in mind and the nature of the role that you think don't forget about these things or make sure you capitalize on these things? What would you say to me?
Well, from what and like I told you, Dave, I love giving advice, but one thing that I found to be really helpful was take advantage of your child's short attention span.
Mm,
You know, if they're flipping out because you took the knife away from them, give them a spoon. And all of a sudden, the world is different for them. So, as a young dad, these little things that would drive you crazy, you can avoid if you take advantage of their short attention span. Put them in a different direction, give them something else to play with.
mm,
It's usually works. Second thing, I think advice for a new dad would be to realize that kids' reaction to, let's say, bad news is very intense, right?
mm.
It's also very brief. Oh, just hold on. Don't react. So just try to develop the patience. It'll be intense, but it'll be brief. And,
Interesting.
bad things are gonna happen and the tough things but so recognize that. I think those are 2 good pieces of advice for any, young dad. Try to enjoy it, try to say yes, kids get a lot of no's, so try and say yes from time to time if you can. And the thing about the world, right, and what you're bringing a child into, um, you know, I've spent a lot of time thinking about that. We're obviously immigrants. My wife's also American, so Anna's very much an American kid, although she's very much a Venetian kid too. But
Mm,
there's a certain stigma to being an immigrant. You got to watch out for that. I don't know what Leo probably is not going to be in that position unless you come
yep,
to Italy, fall in love with it, and decide you have to live here. I don't see that happening, Dave, but it might happen.
you might.
But as far as the world, I mean, if you look back on it, the world has always had a lot of problems, and you can't let that stop you. I mean, the climate change is a big thing now, but you know, people here, some people that are still alive in Italy lived through 2 world wars.
Indeed.
Didn't have enough to eat, a lot of them, and so life has never been all smooth sailing. It's going to be rough, and
Mm,
just use your emotional intelligence to figure it all out. And it may not always be right, it may not always work, but it'll be good enough.
yeah, no doubt. And I feel like our role with that in mind, our role as parents is never to you can't equip them exactly for, say, the specific times. And it's actually a timeless reality that we live in struggle. We live in turmoil to a degree, or the world is
Yeah,
all is the world's always a little messy. So
yeah,
the best thing,
messy.
perhaps, if I'm making sense of this, is to really equip them with, say, resilience, resourcefulness, some grace, some respect, right, and
And try
some
something
tenacity.
else. Yeah, the resilience, okay, get up and try something else and see what works, right?
Yeah, interesting.
And, I often say when I'm doing that change management, you probably have taught change management classes and people are so resistant to change. I often ask the people I'm working with, like, when your kids ask you, what should I do with my life? What should my career be? 'Cause that's a big thing for kids. They worry about that, right?
Mhm.
I say, do you tell them, look, just learn one thing, do it until you're 65 and retire? No, no one tells their kid that. They say, learn something new every day, keep learning, keep improving your skills. So, you know, the world can be tough, it can be scary, it can be wonderful. If something's not working, do something else.
Yeah. Okay, second to last question, and then we'll end with a
All right.
true capstone here. But this is kind of a funny question.
Okay.
I'm just trying to think about how to phrase it here because I've thought, if I do the math, I'm gonna one day have a 20-something-year-old kid, and I'm gonna be in my 60s and feel like, wow, I, you know, I don't know. I'm at this point wondering, will I wish I had kids sooner so that then I was younger when they were 20, whatever. What is it like to be a 67-year-old father
Uh,
to a 20-year-old? What's the mindset like or the experience like being a mature father with a now mature daughter?
well, I told my daughter the first thing she has to do is not to do what I did. Like, I don't want her having her kids in her 40s. She has to have her babies young, and she can drop them off. I'll do everything. She doesn't have to. I'll raise them. Like, do not do what I did. That's the word. She just laughs when I tell her this.
Yeah, that's
But
awesome.
I have also I have made a big effort. Not really made a big effort because it's kind of enjoyable, but uh, I'm sort of friendly with her friends, right? And my wife is too, right? But it's nice, because you stay young that way, right? And, I don't go to a bar with them or anything, but, they come over, I make them dinner, we have a coffee together sometimes. And, so I think being 67 is old and, having a 20-year-old, obviously I'm 67, but, you know, it's the reality, right? So you deal with it, right?
I
You
love
do.
that. Yeah, you're like, maybe do it a little sooner than I did it. I feel like I might give Leo that counsel a little bit, although I think it's gonna be beautiful and work out and I have no regrets. But B is to tap into their youthfulness a bit, right? To kind of like savor our own youth with that connection that they have. Just there may be
Yeah.
a bridge to the
And,
times.
I'll give you the classic example. I mean, Rome, for example. I lived there in the 80s, right?
Okay.
And it was wonderful, right? Now, when I go to Rome, I see all the changes,
Mm,
right? Even though they say the eternal city never changes. My old neighborhood is completely different, completely. And I don't even, I used to know everyone in the neighborhood. I know no one in the neighborhood.
mm,
Everything is a restaurant, a bar. There's no little shops like there used to be. It's
yep.
all, but it was 40 years ago. Right. So when I think of Rome, I think, oh God, why would anybody want to go there now? But my daughter and her two girlfriends went for the weekend. They got an Airbnb. They went to Rome for the weekend. They had a blast. They loved it. It was great,
Mm.
you know? So don't get so jaded, right? Try to, well, Rome isn't what it used to be. When I was young, it was so much. They're living the reality. When I moved to New York to go to NYU, my parents said, "Oh, New York is horrible. It's dangerous. It's terrible." When we were young, it was great. Well, it was great when I lived there, even though it was the 70s. It was sort of dangerous
Mm.
and not as nice as it is now, certainly. But try to live their experience a little bit.
Well, it dawns on me, no matter what age we are, one day there's a there's a tendency to be jaded and to be conclusive and made up your mind about whatever, a place you used to be in or a topic or,
Right.
whatever.
Absolutely.
So
Right.
try not to get jaded. And our kids remind us what it's like to see the world through fresh eyes, through new eyes. And that doesn't mean you have to see it the same way as them, but just that there's always a different way to see things.
Yeah, and
It's pretty
appreciate the way they're
special.
seeing it. Appreciate the way they're seeing it.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, Frank. Ultimate question here. I just want you to picture picture maybe when Anna's 67 or older and she's sitting around a campfire with her friends with probably her, let's say her kids, maybe a generation or two of the family lineage. You're not there. Maybe you've moved on. Maybe you're just not in the room or around the campfire rather, but they're telling stories of Frank O'Halloran. And you're known for three things. And they're weaving tales about these three big categorical things that you are. What do you hope those three memories sound like?
This is a tough question, but I would say that I didn't lose my temper too often. That I remained calm and tried to be helpful, reliable. I think the other thing would be that I was a lot of fun. And the other thing would be that I could be counted on.
Mhm. That last one
Reliable.
is, yep, reliable. That last one is, it's like, I wonder if that's the ultimate, I'm exploring the ultimate role, thinking of fatherhood as the ultimate role. And I'm just thinking how, if you really boil it down, our kids want to know that they can count on us.
Yeah.
And yes, that we love them. And yes, that we're good about our temper, keeping it in a safe range.
Keeping it contained.
Yeah,
Right?
keeping it contained. But I think it is something special about, I want Leo to know, and I'm glad you want Anna to know, like, no matter what, you can count on me. I got your back.
I had a chance to read an article. I wish I kept it because it was very funny. It was geniuses about advice for dads, right?
Okay.
I said, when you travel, all stay in the same hotel room. Don't get separate hotel rooms. Just stay and get room service because kids love room service. And every time Lisa and I have taken Anna to a hotel, we've had room service, and she loved it. It comes creating memories for them. That's a great job for dad to create memories.
Oh, that's a good way to put it. Our job is to create memories
And order room service.
and room
Even if
service.
it's ridiculously expensive, it gets there cold and probably not that good. They'll love it.
They love it. There's, oh man, the innocence. They're not very picky about things. They're just like, this is magic. They just brought us food and we're in our pajamas.
Yeah,
This is
it's amazing. Yeah.
Well, Frank, thank you for your wisdom, your insight, and your time on Whoa Dad Go Dad. Just really appreciate exploring and getting to know you a little bit more from a different angle. So thanks for your time. And I know the listeners are going to enjoy this one. So we'll catch you on the next one.
Dave, take care. It was a pleasure talking to you. Good luck.
Thank you, Frank. We'll see
Bring
you.
him to Italy.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
There you have it. That's been another episode of Whoa Dad Go Dad. If you like what you're hearing, hit the like button, subscribe to the podcast so you get the future ones, and please spread the word and post this episode to your social networks. That's powerful. Perhaps the best thing you can do is share this directly with a new dad or a soon-to-be dad that you know personally. Let them know you're rooting them on. And indeed, drop a comment and be really a part of this dialogue on fatherhood with me. Let me know in the comments a question you want me to ask other dads, or just some feedback. How does this sound to you? What's helpful? What stands out about these conversations? I would appreciate that intel as I grow Whoa Dad Go Dad. I've got many more episodes to come, and I'm so glad you're here. Looking forward to catching you on the next one.
Whoa, Dad, go Dad, here we go now. Oh yeah, the ultimate roll now. Oh yeah, here we go now. Whoa, Dad, go